Hi, Evelyn. I'm taking a look at your week for art and first year assignment number 2, and that looks pretty good. I like the transition between the areas of overlap, and I checked with the color picker to ensure that the three vertical yellows were the same in terms of RGB values. They are. There's a little tiny green line at the bottom left, which should be removed before you put this in your portfolio. Now, on to assignment 3 and first transparency. I really like your take on this. It's fresh. I like the way that you're using varying degrees of opacity as we go around the square, both with the light blue and also with the green. Nice idea there. Now, with the depth piece, well, I guess what you're going for is that lighter seems nearer and darker seems further away, because I believe all of these colors are pretty close to being equally saturated. Here I'm just pulling out the color picker. So the yellow is saturated, the red is perhaps a little more saturated, but mainly I think your idea is lighter things seem near, which is fine. However, the overlapping is canceling out the effect. So what I do, if this were my work of art, is I take each smaller rectangle and tuck it behind the one underneath it to help with the illusion. Your vibration piece seems good. I guess that's a yellow-green, so maybe that's an ambiguous color. Generally, we get the best vibration with a warm and a cool color. All right, nice stuff here. Okay, here's Mark's array of work, and first the assignment 2. I really like the drama between the areas of overlap. Red over, ambiguous, and blue over looks nice, and it seems as though this file was built from scratch and a nice job was done. Now onto transparency. Whoa, this is a pretty involved image here. I'm just going to zoom in to take a closer look. It feels almost like a series of floor plans that have been overlaid in different color schemes. Okay, so that's quite a nice piece. I'm not sure anything changed in that since drafts, and there were notes for you about that in drafts, as well as the vibration piece. So you might want to look there for a couple other ideas. Now on to depth, and let's see. I guess what you're going for is you're trying to show the heights of the building, those spires, as being far away, because they're paler. The intensity, the saturation of the color is diminished there, and so I'm just going to check that out. Yep, that's definitely the case. So that's actually a nice idea, and here you've been building towers from rectangles. The only thing I'd say is that that center tower with its edge going lighter doesn't follow the same sort of system, because the far away end of that building, if it's a rectangular plan building, would be more narrow than the near end, and we wouldn't be able to see the sides, is what I'm trying to explain there. But it's very ingenious. Next, vibration. Those colors are complements on the digital wheel. And I did make you a note. I actually made you a little file in the feedback, and the picture feedback on this one, so you might want to take a look if you didn't already. I don't know if there's a change in this or not, but I think one of your classmates took that feedback idea and maybe ran with it. I like the way that the vibration imagery is transforming from left to right. Taking a look at Kayla's work here, first her assignment 2, and that looks pretty good. I think that those areas of overlap seem to have a good interval. They seem even. Just checking the vertical orange stripes outside of the area of overlap to make sure that they have identical RGB values, and they do. Next we have transparency from assignment 3, and that's a nice piece. It's interesting to see how the stripes, the vertical ones, extend beyond the composition into that white frame. That's something I hadn't noticed before. I feel as though there are a few greens in there, sort of in the central right area, that blend together, and I just urge you to let your greens have a greater interval so that colors don't seem to bleed together. Also, here we'll take a look next at depth, which is the purplish piece. This piece, works fairly well. It might also work for transparency. The idea is that darker colors should appear to be in the rear, colors that are more saturated in the front, and so on. And there's a general quality of that. However, I think it could have been pushed just a little more. Now, onto vibration. This is sort of like a double whammy. We get a couple of color schemes in one. One of the schemes is essentially blues and oranges, and the other one yellow and violets. And those are complementary pairs. The colors here are at pretty high saturation. I would say on the left side, you've got a lot of colors going there, almost more than are needed. I took this file and I stretched it out to see if maybe it was a word. I was talking about that sort of thing with Mark in his work, but it doesn't seem legible to me. Okay, nice work, Kayla. Okay, here's JD's work for week 4, and first his assignment 2, which looks okay. This looks like a file that was built from scratch, and that's always a little bit more of a job. In the middle, we were looking for an ambiguous area of overlap. That would mean that it wasn't apparent whether the blue was over or the cyan. And in this case, it's feeling like that blue is over. In fact, it feels like with the last two on the right, the blue stripe is over in a very similar fashion. So this is a file that could have used a little more work. Now, on to assignment 3 in first part 1, transparency. Well, the transparency is occurring here, and it's a nice array of colors that were chosen. I feel as though the opacity slider must have been used in Photoshop here, which is a fine way to work. I always say that if you are working with a nearly symmetrical arrangement, go all the way. And I think you're close, actually, JD. Maybe just a little tiny bit of adjusting. I'm just checking to see. Like, for instance, that bottom red square doesn't seem like it's exactly centered. When you need to make fine-tune adjustments, use the up, down, right, left keys to go just one pixel at a time. Okay, now onto depth, and you definitely have the idea here. The smaller shapes are darker. They appear to be toward the rear. You're leading the eye back that way. One little improvement I could suggest is that if you put this on a gray ground, for example, or some tone, any tone really, you would have a better illusion when we see the dark green against the white backdrop. That creates contrast, and whenever there's strong contrast, the illusion of depth is canceled out to some extent. That's not something that was expressed clearly in the week's lecture. It's just an additional thing, something to consider. So here you've got red, yellow, and blue, the paint primaries, working in a vibration motif. This is fine. I checked and everything is fully saturated. Usually just 2 colors is enough for a vibration, but this does work.